Okay, y'all. So just right out of the gate, I have to say huge thank you to Kyle over at Circle Collective for making this introduction today. Luca Balser's here, which is filmmaker and one of the co-founders of Gummy Films, which was actually co-founded with Rachel Walden and Pauline Chalamet. So just super geeked out for this conversation today. Can't wait to get into it. Luca, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you're dialing in from the East Coast today, right? From the New York, one of the boroughs?
Yeah, from Brooklyn.
That's great, man. That's great. Yeah, I just saw, well, I guess I'll kind of, throw this out there. One of the movies we're going to be talking about today is What Doesn't Float, which I was able to see. And amongst other things, it's just such a cool way to see New York. Does it cover all five boroughs?
Pretty much. I think the only there's one that's set in the Bronx, but it's actually shot in Staten Island. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
in theory, yes, but in practicality, no.
Well, that's cool. It's yeah, that's a really fun movie. I definitely want to get into that here in just a minute,
Thank you.
because I know this is a brand new partner release, and as in addition to getting a wider release soon. Um, but are you a lifetime New Yorker?
Yeah, I grew up in Park Slope, uh, and now I live right next to Park Slope, so I can't get out for some reason.
So many people are trying to get in, so you've got the life.
Yeah,
Um, there's been a huge migration to Texas from the coasts recently. Do you feel that? Are people moving out of New York, or are people still moving in waves?
I felt during the pandemic, a lot of people moved out kind of quickly. But I feel like once masks were a little less extreme to use, it just people just moved right back in. But so on a personal level, I feel like I don't know anyone moving out yet, but there are people who want to, I think.
Like I'll trade places with him. New York's always been on my short list of cities I'd love to live in. And a surprisingly beautiful city to shoot films in. It has a
Yeah.
lot of personality.
Oh yeah. Uh, a lot of personality, a lot of places that have been shot though, so it's hard to find your own version of New York sometimes, but
Oh, I
it's
get that.
and it's
That scene from Annie
expensive.
Hall's been shot 100 times. He's
The Manhattan shot with the
yeah,
bridge. Um,
exactly. You said it's expensive to shoot in as well.
it's very expensive to shoot here, unless you do it the way we did. But we for what doesn't float, we didn't permit that first vignette, and we kept getting kicked out of all the locations we tried to shoot in. So also, it's maybe worth just paying for.
It's tends to shoot. Well, yeah, maybe that's a. So look, this is, I think, by way of introduction. I think it's very interesting to maybe touch on what doesn't float, and then maybe even we can come back to it a little bit. But I'd love to understand a little bit more about this. So, what doesn't float is a series of six, if I counted correctly, vignettes about New York, and I would say my impression of it is. Um, it's a very timely movie because it all has to do with sort of preconceived notions coming into a situation and the way that um, I think films, but also sort of life can you think you understand what's going to happen in a given situation and kind of what happens when you should be more open and patient and don't have that understanding and things don't go as you think. Is
Yeah,
that a fair synopsis in a
yeah, I think
sentence?
you nailed it. That's great.
Okay. It's
Uh,
very good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, please.
no, yeah, it's like what you said, preconceived notions going into these situations that I think in a city like New York happen all the time. Where you the situation gets ahead of you and your ego is kind of leading your reaction rather than common sense. A lot of the time, or your stubbornness and like not listening, not being patient, like you said. Um, like even a week or two ago, I was biking to work and I went through an intersection and this other biker cut me off and we slammed into each other. And luckily we were fine, but we both had the idea that we had the green light. So we're like bickering over this arbitrary thing that the important thing is just that we were both fine and could
Okay,
keep
okay.
biking. And then as we walked by or as we crashed, these three cops are walking down the street. And instead of like asking if we're fine, they just like pointed at us and laughed. So it's like it's a very very kind of common type of situation I feel like to get into, especially in New York. I don't know what it's like in Austin, but I think it's just a human situation. Just you get into these moments where you don't quite know how to get out in a graceful way.
Yeah, I don't want to get too philosophical with it because I think this is definitely a movie about New York, but it happens all the time in marriage, it happens all the time at work, it happens all the time with your friends, right? Like as people kind of grow and change, sometimes it's difficult to see that change, and so you keep like a static like perception of them, right? And then
Yeah.
uh, every new situation can be different though. I think it's a very um I think it's a very interesting topic to explore, but the thing that I love so much about the movie is it doesn't take itself that seriously either. It's this like beautifully shot movie that looks like like an Academy Award type of production in terms of like the way it's shot and the beautiful use of color and all of that. Like it's a beautiful movie, but it feels like you're also having some fun with it.
Oh yeah. It was a lot of fun to make and a lot of fun. I mean, just knowing the because those situations that you often come out of and you laugh it off. It's not like something that's like this heavy thing that sticks with you forever.
Yeah,
It's like a story you tell a friend later on. Obviously,
yeah.
there's some in there that are a little heavier, uh, but I think it was important when Sean was writing it and I was reading just to make sure there's a light touch to it. Um, we were inspired by that movie Wild Tales. I don't know if you saw it at first, just because it's these incredibly intense and ridiculous scenes, like the driver, the road rage one, and people just going to these extremes. And then after the fact, it's kind of just funny. Like the only thing you can do is laugh. Um, but also just to say that I was really lucky to work with Sean Price Williams and Hunter Zimney and Matt Clegg and Charlotte Dupre, who shot it super beautifully, but also in an intimate way, I hope. So it's not just like you're looking at the images without having that sense of humor.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I was really nervous what you were going to do with Larry Fessenden, and I think given all the circumstances of what he could have been in that scene, I think you did him right. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
a lot of people are like, "Uh-oh, what's he gonna do in this with
yeah,
this
yeah,
girl?" But in that
yeah,
one, he's just a good kind of guy who doesn't know how to, and then he gets this father complex and tries to save it, and it completely blows up in his face in like two
exactly.
seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, he is so I love him, and
Kind
he was so fun to work with.
kind of sneaky good actor, I have to say.
Amazing actor.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, I love his movies. And I even more I love hearing him talk about his movies. He's such an intelligent guy. But pretty good actor. I was like, damn.
I guess, yeah, I mean, he's mostly in genre, uh, but he can really turn on the acting chops. I think
Yeah.
he's great. I mean, it's funny because even in the context of like not a horror movie, we covered him in blood, so it felt like there was some pull back to his body of work.
He was at home.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a good segue to one of the questions I kind of had, because Larry Fessenden's a New York guy, right?
Hmm.
His career, he's been like reimagining. What about vampires, like in New York? What about
Yeah.
like werewolves in New York, like all these things. And so this movie, I was trying to think of, there's a couple of filmmakers. Obviously, Scorsese comes to mind. Obviously, there's the one New York Stories, I think it's called,
Yeah.
or there's a couple of different of these anthology films that have been made about New York. Um, but it feels like the common theme in all these movies is that there's a real sense of community in sort of the New York filmmaking scene. Is this something that's real, or is this just does it feel that way in the movies that come out about it?
Like in terms of behind the scenes, there's
Yeah.
just there's an amazing scene here and a lot of insanely talented people who are hanging out and all know each other. So yeah, I would say it's definitely feels that way when you're here.
That's awesome. Is it difficult to is it sort of like a like if you're from New York, you kind of grow up with these people and then you all get into filmmaking, or like how does that, do you just happen to meet each other because you're working on set a lot? Like how does that work to kind of how does that community get built?
Um, I'm sure it's different for everyone. I didn't go to film school and I went to fine art school and then kind of fell into a post job right after I graduated. Um, so I was, kind of in a solitary confinement for 3 years,
Okay.
because that's where assistant editors go. Um, and but I was a musician too, and I met people through the music scene. And then I mean, me and Hunter grew up 10 blocks from each other in Park Slope, and we didn't meet until 2019. And then we hit it off, and obviously we have so much in common, and feels like we've known each other a lot longer than that.
Wild.
Yeah, but I think yeah, I once you're on set, you just meet everyone, I feel like, and uh it's a very close-knit scene.
Well, that's probably a beautiful segue into one of the questions I had. So you, outside of what doesn't float, which by the way, we can kind of, weave in and out of that throughout the discussion because I have more stuff to talk about, some really cool vignettes and stuff. But outside of that, you've been involved in some pretty amazing projects as an assistant editor and editor, um, from all the way from, some really interesting short films, which I want to touch on in just a minute, um, to pretty large productions, right? From A24.
Yeah,
So
A24 and Sikelia.
Sikelia. So yeah, so do you mind just kind of maybe starting over a little bit? Like who is Luca? How'd you get into filmmaking? How'd you get into editing? How'd you start liking movies? Like, can we get into that for a minute?
Sure. I think I've always liked movies. My dad is a huge Marx Brothers head, so we had all those on VHS. And then, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings on VHS when I was little, and I would just watch them or play them, and then I'd watch it on the slow rewind backwards because I
Okay.
was just like it was so I would watch it like over and over. Um, and then I was also into music and into art and kind of followed that. But right after college, I was lucky enough to get in touch with David Tedeschi, who is, one of the best doc editors out there, I think. And I worked for him for 3 years on the Rolling Thunder Review.
Oh, okay.
Um, and that was kind of I think, I had gotten through to Cooper Union, but that was like when I learned the most about filmmaking and life and just like essentially what it is to make a movie, what, how to think uh, in terms of structure and movement. And he was like a real teacher to me. So from that point, I was very hooked. And then I got in touch with Ronnie Bronstein through Paul Grimstad, who scored a couple of those earlier Safdie movies and scores all Mike Bilandic's movies. and I met him at a screening, and we traded music, and we were gonna collab. I actually played slide guitar on one of his records.
Okay.
But him and Ronnie are close buddies. So I talked with Ronnie, and Ronnie was like, "Okay, well, we have this film. We've never worked with an assistant editor, uh, and Paul, you're in." So then I worked on Uncut Gems, and then it was like another. It was like if that working for David was a undergrad degree in film, that was like a master's. Uh, and I got to see both the documentary side and the narrative side. And an assistant editor is it's a weird position on a film because it's mostly technical. There's
Yes.
some creative sides. I would end up doing temp color and temp mixes for screenings and stuff, but on a narrative, you get to see every single shot and how a director chooses to shoot their coverage. And that was like completely mind blowing to me to see and how Josh and Benny were doing it for Gems because I had never, I'd learned about it but not seen it in practice. Um, and so that just, I picked up a lot of knowledge from them. Yeah, so right as as Gems was wrapping up, I met Rachel Walden, who I was cutting her thesis film, and we hit it off. And I asked her if she'd want to produce this thing that I'd been working on with Shauna Fitzgerald, the writer of What Doesn't Float. And Shauna had come up with these vignettes that all took place by bodies of water in New York, and it was something that we could tangibly make uh, by funding piece by piece, going through. It's an omnibus film, so we could make one vignette, save up, make another, because we didn't have the money to produce a full feature at that point. And I met with Pauline Chalamet too, who also grew up in New York, so we had known each other for a long time. And saw if she wanted to co-produce and be in one of the vignettes because she's a brilliant actor. And so in that process, Rachel, Pauline, and I needed an LLC for the movie, and decided why not start one for a production company together, so that we could kind of build and grow from this experience together rather than working on these bigger movies that were so great to have the opportunity to work on, but we kind of wanted to start making our own stuff. And so we started an LLC, and that has become Gummy Films, with Pauline and Rachel and I. And after 4 years, I finally finished What Doesn't Float.
Um, well, there's so much in there I want to kind of touch on, but maybe there's something that would be helpful to dive into just a little bit deeper. So you said working with Tedeschi was a undergrad degree, and the Safdie brothers was a master's. What what is it like to be in the editing room with the Safdie brothers? Like, what is that? Like, I don't think many of us have any concept of how amazing that would be. Like, what does that actually feel like, or what actually
It's
happens? You know?
um it's a blast. It's really they're so fun to work with in that context, and just seeing, Ronnie's dynamic with them, because it's Ronnie and Benny have, twin edit stations, and I had a third one room over, and then would come in and watch down scenes as they'd cut it. And Josh was in pretty much every day. So it was, really, I'm lucky to have had that experience. And just seeing how they would cut a scene and then rework a scene, and then they had to rework this whole intro piece. Um, and it was like the film was still malleable at that point to them. They were still like, breaking away from the script in a way that could allow the movie to play in a much better way than, even if, rather than being attached to the text, they were like thinking about it as a living, breathing thing. Um, and yeah, it was an amazing experience
Wow.
and very funny. I mean, some of the funniest people.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah, because that's like, that's not a gala, showing up in a black tie and suit. That's like everyone's in a hoodie and sweatpants, just hunkered down, trying to make this thing work for 12 hours or whatever a day, right?
Yeah, 24 sometimes.
Or 24 hours a day sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it was it was a wild experience.
Um, so one of the things you mentioned, well, I mean, I have a million more questions about Uncut Gems, but that's just cool that you got to work on that. And it's pretty amazing that you got to work right out of the gate with Marty, a project with Martin Scorsese and then the Safdie brothers. Um, so I don't really have a broader point there, but just that's awesome. What an experience. Um,
Yeah, I
do you
mean,
talk?
I can't
Yeah.
believe it because Tedeschi, I didn't even know it was. I knew it was. My godmother knew Margaret Bodie, who's one of the heads of the Film Foundation.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Yeah.
and she's kind of, my the my other godmother in a way, just because she's helped me so much and got me that job. Um, but it was a situation where David needed a post PA for 3 weeks. Uh, and we met and we hit it off. And he was like, "Oh, do you know Avid?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And in reality, I didn't know a thing about Avid. And so I watched a million tutorials. I went in and I like could kind of figure out the language. And I did the 3 weeks, and then it turned into 3 years because the project just kept going. And yeah, that's why I was like, I didn't think it was going to be such a big job, but it turned out great. And me and David are still buddies.
That's hilarious
He
though.
believes that, yeah. So fake it.
Sorry, he's what? What were you about to
Uh,
say? He's what?
he actually is an executive producer on What Doesn't Float too.
Okay, got you. Yeah, I feel like so many people that get into filmmaking and actually kind of, are starting to make a living on it have some story like that where it's like, do you know Avid? Yeah, 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 yeah. Super experienced at
you
it.
you kind of have to pretend a little bit at first. I knew I didn't know Avid, but I knew I could figure it out essentially. Uh, and it
Um,
took a while to figure out, but
well, uh, one of you mentioned Rachel Walden, so maybe just briefly that's a good segue into talking about Gummy Films for a second because she's a name that is certainly, she's very active now and she's making a name for herself in terms of filmmaking, but is primarily known for a long time as a um, music video producer and director, right?
yeah, she
And has
kind of,
some, yeah,
yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there.
no, 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 just some amazing projects she's worked with. That's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, uh, she kind of, got started producing with these guys in Atlanta, Resolve Media Group. And they do huge hip hop videos mainly and some country videos.
Mhm.
Uh, and then so she was confident in her ability to produce these kind of larger scale music videos. And then once we started Gummy, we got a few artists lined up and were able to do it. And that really kind of helped us be able to make the company a real thing because now we were able to get an office and start working on these things that would bring in more jobs. And we have a ton of music videos on our slate, obviously, uh, and it's mainly through her. Um, but she's also an amazing director, and her short Lemon Tree Just was in Director's Fortnite this last spring, which was very exciting.
Yeah, so that was thank you for making that connection for me because I was just about to say Lemon Tree, where can people see it? Because like that's not just a oh that's cute like it's a nice short like that's a really good movie, really good short film.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean she is unbelievably talented. But it just so it played at Director's Fortnite and was we signed a distribution deal for shorts, which I didn't really know was as much of a thing as I guess it is. But in Europe, it's I guess you can do more with shorts, which is really great because I've always been thinking like, oh, with a short film, in the States, you play at some festivals and then it kind of goes somewhere to die. But
Okay.
this company is getting it seen all over the place, and we're hoping to have it live on eventually on a streaming platform, but probably won't be for another 6 months to a year. Um, and then people can watch it hopefully because it's I know it's nowhere to be found on the internet.
I was laughing because wasn't there, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but when the internet was first born, there was a joke about going to lemontree.com and I think it was Lemon Tree. I hope I'm not getting the URL wrong, but it was just this really like gnarly picture of like a bunch of geriatric people in like extreme sexual situations. And it was, do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't. I remember similar things, but I
I
don't remember
think some
lemontree.com. Do you think it's
someone
still
was saying,
there?
let's find out. I'm not on my work computer. Um, I don't, yeah, let's see. No, now it's a hair salon. It was someone listening is going to be like, no, it wasn't Lemon Tree, it was Lemon Party or something like that. But it it just made me think of this old site. No, but like the thing that I was struck by, if I can just maybe synthesize this, why people should watch this 17-minute short. She's able to pack so much um like history into these characters and backstory without them ever mentioning it. There's no, it's not heavy on exposition, but just the way that they're set up and like the way that the dad kind of moves around with the son, um, what the dad doesn't do. It's just so much emotion out of nothing. Like it's just instantly like she kind of is able to create this world and it feels like you know these characters instantly. It's pretty amazing actually.
Yeah. Um, and I think part of I mean it's partially based off she would obviously talk much better to this, but it's based off an experience her grandfather had as a kid. And she had recorded this or had this recording of him telling the story, and that was kind of the catalyst for the short. Um, and she's was thinking of it as a proof of concept for a feature too. So it kind of feels more like if you took a little section of a feature out. I mean, obviously there's a full arc, beginning and end, but it doesn't play. I feel like I see some shorts that try to pack the full feature worth of material into a short, and that requires more exposition, obviously. But it's kind of nice to be in a situation where you're thrown into the world and you're just picking up things by the behavior of the actors
Yeah.
or how it's shot. Um, and we,
Well, this
Charlie Robinson, who's actually an incredible production designer, is the playing the father, and he did such a great job with that.
Re- yeah, like he's an actor for sure. Whatever he does in his day job, like it's
Yeah,
he's able to pull a lot of kind of weight out of those scenes. I mean, this is the thing, like movies that don't over explain everything and let the audience just sort of have like trust the audience to have their own reactions. Um, this is my favorite style of movie, right? If it hits you over the head with like this is how you're supposed to feel at every given moment. I mean, it's not like I hate it, it's fine, but I love it when you're just sort of able to sit there and experience this and form your own conclusions, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah, I think I definitely agree. It's
she's,
otherwise you're not fully like diving in if someone's telling you exactly how to feel.
yeah,
You're watching it and it's not an experience as much.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the exception might be something like Uncut Gems where like they're just beating you over the head with how to feel, but it's sort of it's intentional, I guess, right? Like they're just trying to bring that stress out.
Yeah, it's stressful, but
Yeah.
you still like there's some behavior of Howard that I feel like it's not there's no dialogue that gives exposition to it, but he's so brilliant in that film that you kind of pick it up just from how he's acting.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our secret great actors. It's crazy how he's able to turn that on. Um,
Incredible.
there's another movie that came out in New York recently called Shiva Baby that I think has a similar stressful energy to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Shiva Baby.
And I hope more people get a chance to see that. I think it's doing fairly well anyways, but it's so hard to sit through. But it's so, so good.
Shiva. It's incredibly stressful and relatable because it's, I mean, not everyone has a family that big and maybe that uh without uh, barriers, but
Yeah, 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 yeah.
everyone has their version of a family function like that is not fun to sit through.
I was joking with someone and saying my big fat Greek wedding is directed by the Safdie brothers. Um, but anyways, then I guess staying in shorts for a minute because there's another one that I was able to see before we spoke, um, which I think just shows some of the creativity, kind of playfulness that Gummy Films has, which is not from one of the founders, at least as far as the director goes. But it's a short about called Bowling Forever.
Hmm.
Um, and the director is Elfie Odgiri, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was a very wacky, fun experience too. And we got to use, animation and it kind of opened our door to that, which it has this insane animation sequence um, where you kind of go into this uh, girl as she's dying's mind with a bowling ball that's tormenting her.
Huh?
Um, and yeah, I mean it's wacky and weirdo, but also I think that's also a kind of personal experience in like the basis of it was a personal experience for Alfie.
Oh, okay.
Um, so there's still the heart in there, um, kind of grounding the emotion. Um,
I was just thinking like I can't remember a time where I've seen a bunch of female bowling pins having a pillow fight. Um, but I'm very happy to be watching it.
yeah, it's very unique to her. She has another project we're working on now about her grandmother who was a Holocaust survivor in Nazi occupied Paris, and it's a crazy sprawling story that we're super excited about.
Does it have
Excited to
um
to make, not, it's obviously filled with horrible stuff, but
okay, so it's more of a drama. It's not gonna have pillow fights with
well, it's Alfie, so she's bringing in plenty of jokes and stuff. It's like she likes to pick these topics that are really heavy and just bring this lighthearted touch to it. And her grandmother was a painter as well and kind of like a mystic who had moved to America. And she has all these tapes from her, I think in the early 2000s, kind of explaining her paintings. And uh, she would, she claimed to see aliens that would tell her to paint certain things. Um, it's a
okay.
wild story. It's so interesting. But she started with painting kind of these historical pieces about Paris that have the full story within these pretty big scale paintings. And then it kind of developed, and she started painting the aliens she was seeing and painting people from her past that kind of still existed in her mind. Um,
What?
and yeah, it's really wild stuff.
Sounds like there's a documentary in there somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Um, wow, interesting. Well, I was just gonna say for people to get a concept of this, it's a 14-minute short, so easy to watch. But to
Hmm.
get a sense of the humor that's in this, I laughed so hard. There's a scene where this I don't know the exact age of this young girl, but she's high school. I'm assuming maybe possibly a little bit
Hmm.
older, but she's in this. She agrees to meet this guy who lies about his age, and they're sitting at a bowling alley, and her grandpa calls him out and said, "Who is this?" And she's like, "Oh, just a pedophile I met online." I died because
Yeah,
it's like
that
played for laughs.
the guy playing the pedophile too is um he's he's the animator, and
Okay.
he wanted to be credited. He's credited not as his name in real life,
Uh-huh.
but he's still being recognized outside from the short, and people are like, oh, you were in the short as the pedophile, so he can't escape it.
Uh, but I mean, it's not like overly dark. It's played for laughs.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, but anyway, just an idea of the humor in that movie. It makes sense that she'd be willing to go to to use humor in some pretty dark places with the French Holocaust story, which is not
yeah.
necessarily known for its comedy otherwise.
No, no, I wouldn't say so.
Um, well, okay, so Gummy Films is I guess we've kind of touched on this, but just to say it explicitly, it's a production company. You have some movies you're making on that are your own, but you're also, doing production work for other features, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we started it more as kind of a collective, me, Rachel, and Pauline. I don't know if we mentioned yet, but she's obviously a huge part of it, and also produced What Doesn't Float with Rachel. Um, and we kind of started as a collective to just work on each other's projects, but then got a bunch of music videos in, and we got a few other features. RachelOrmont.com is one that we're super excited about. Rachel could obviously speak to it a lot more because she was the on the ground producer. Um, but yeah, we have a lot coming up. We have a movie we're making with our friend Jordan Alexander, who is like a legendary locations manager, and brilliant writer director, uh, about his hometown and right outside New Orleans in Louisiana.
Oh, cool.
Um, and yeah, we have a lot of stuff coming up. Part of the reason why we decided to do the company is because we all came from these different backgrounds of production and post-production. And Pauline is a brilliant producer, but also a brilliant actor. And so we have the knowledge of bringing something up from the start to finish. And so it's production and post production and pre production. Um, and yeah, we're trying to move towards more features, but it's I mean, right now it's hard to get anything off the ground because it's a tough time, but
Strike.
we have a few. Yeah, exactly. Um, that's where we're headed, I think.
Well, if What Doesn't Float is any indication, there's going to be some really amazing movies coming out of there. And you said Rachel Warden you mentioned that by name. I see that on the website as well, kind of mentioned, or Rachel, or wait, or what did I say? Rachel
You
Ormont.
said, or you combined Ormont and Walden, I think.
RachelOrmont.com. Um,
RachelWalden.com.
yeah, I'm sure that's something too. Um, there are if there's a link on Gummy that takes to. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It says on Gummy Films, it says RachelOrmont.com, but it takes to a link to a Variety article. Anyways, um, but that movie's coming out hopefully sometime, I guess, next year at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's looking more like 2024 release, but TBD still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, and then I guess the last sort of, topic I'd love to cover is you have this interesting relationship with Circle Collective, um, and Kyle there, right? So they picked up this movie at a distribution deal. Is that when they came in?
Yeah. Um, so we Pauline actually knows Marie Zeniter, who works at Utopia and helps Kyle with Circle sometimes.
Okay.
And so Marie put us in touch with Kyle directly, and he liked the film, and we got a distribution deal, and they've been so great to work with. It's like I could not have asked for a better place for this type of movie to live. Um, and yeah, already, we have this special edition Blu-ray with Vinegar Syndrome coming out that we're really excited about.
Yeah.
Uh, they had some really cool hats made by um, Human Boy World,
Okay.
and yeah, Kyle's just lovely to work with. And I know he's been on this podcast, right?
Yeah. 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 He has gem of a human.
Yeah,
Um, and very, very good taste in documentaries as well. So some of the documentaries he's released through Utopia are some of my favorites that I've seen in the last, um, I don't know, 10, 15 years. Like,
yeah,
have you ever seen Martha: A Picture Story?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh. It's just like that if it's impossible, like nobody could ever act the part of Martha. She's this woman who I guess she's in her 70s or 80s now, but she as a photographer that grew up in just happened to start taking pictures of graffiti around New York when it was when it was very big in the 80s, and
Mm,
still very much illegal. She was sort of and so she got in with these artists and would like when they would go tag, she would follow them with a camera, and she produced this book which became sort of like the Bible for young graffiti artists as they were thinking about tagging, and then she randomly got involved and started like chronicling the hip hop scene in New York in the 80s. And just she was just like in this like two major cultural like milestones of New York City, and she was right there just chronicling everything. And she has like tens of thousands of photos that have never been released that are in her house just in boxes and stuff. But
wow.
it's her story, and he's just I mean that's only one movie, one doc that they've put out. Um, just super
Is that
interesting.
through Circle or is that
So
was
that's
that a
Utopia, yeah.
okay?
And then Circle was the label that introduced me to Assholes, which is so good.
Love it. I love that movie.
And then another one of my favorite docs, which recently, which is Beauty Day. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh yeah. If you can, I mean, I know you don't have like all the time in the world, but it's a guy that was doing what Jackass was doing about 10 years before they were doing it, and it was just
Oh
himself
wow.
up in Canada, and he did a stupid stunt where the documentary starts where he falls off this tall ladder and breaks his back. Um,
Oh,
and luckily he's able to recover and walk again. But it just this dude is he again one of these characters that nobody could ever act. He's larger than life, and the doc does a good job of capturing him.
so cool. Yeah,
Um,
they put out therapy dogs too, which I felt like was kind of a modern Jackass in a way.
oh, I just got that in like
Yeah.
2 days ago. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's sitting in my watch pile right now. I was so excited when that got announced. Um, but the cover art for What Doesn't Float, I think, does a pretty good job of capturing the movie. Uh, it's uh, from the short with or the vignette about the woman that goes up and decides not to go on the shady um, storage unit with that guy that may or may not be a serial killer. Uh,
Mr. Keith Paulson.
but yeah, it's a movie that I would, if anybody listening, because most of the people that are listening are the type that would collect, given just the way that we built this podcast up, right? So I would strongly suggest that people give What Doesn't Float a chance. It's limited to 1,000 copies, so it's easy. I mean, just as far as the slipcover goes, and then obviously there's a bunch more on the standard. The standard edition is selling like hotcakes. It's only been up for 2 days and it's already sold 550 based on Vinegar Syndrome's website.
Oh wow,
Um,
I didn't know
so
that.
yeah, so that's great. Plus another 300 of the slipcovers. So you've almost sold 1,000 copies of this here in 2 days. So congrats.
Wow.
Um, but I hope that people keep buying it because I think it's this. There's this discussion that's happening about like how do you stand out in OCN, right? Because there's 23 partner labels and every month there's like 12 to 15 new titles coming out.
Hmm.
So another reason I like to do these is to kind of highlight certain ones and help bring in the focus a little bit. And this is a movie that I think people should take a chance on because it's very funny. Like you mentioned, the voyeur, the masturbator. That vignette is hilarious. Like the timing is just perfect on the reveal and on like the panic from the guy.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to shoot. He's great, Declan Eales.
Okay.
Um, and I didn't have a Comtech, which is just to hear what the sound guy is hearing. So I was outside of the car and I could just see him doing that, masturbating over and over again.
Yeah.
And he probably did it like 10 or 15 times because we covered it from a bunch of different angles. But
Please
every
tell me that he
time he
had
got,
the, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, he just got the timing right. Like his hat fell off at the same time in every take, and it didn't feel fake in any way. Um, he was great.
Please tell me that he had to actually come 10 or 15 times over the course of a day and pull that off.
I'll keep that in your imagination.
Just
Keep,
like the
keep
like
thinking
the
about that.
tortures of being an actor. You're like, let's do another take. Fuck.
Yeah, like I don't know if I can. Um, but yeah, I think the cover art is so there's the slip, but then it's in uh, a reversible packaging with the two posters that we have too. Um, that I think capture the anthology quality even more because that the portrait of Pauline in Slip is very specific to her vignette and it's by this great artist, but the other two kind of speak more to the anthology, I think. So I'm glad that they're all going to be part of this release, which is also just because I want all the artists who made the posters to have their pieces be in a physical copy. Um, but yeah, the poster or they haven't released the full look of the Blu-ray yet, I don't think. So the Blu-ray will come in a different look. This is like the inside slip that they released a picture of.
I got you. I got you. It's not the black and white one? That's not the one you're referencing?
So there's the black and white, and then there's the mosaic one with the hands and legs reaching out of the water.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's the one that I've not seen yet then. Um, that's just as far as the pictures that are on their website. But it's
Yeah,
it's it's beautiful artwork though, anyways.
yeah, I love it.
Um,
I think
Great.
Circle works with her a lot, um,
Okay.
or maybe Vinegar does.
Yeah, they have some of their favorite artists for sure that they kind of go back to. But
Yeah.
um, well, look, this is what a great introduction to you, Luca, and to your movies and to Gummy Films. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to make sure gets out there?
I'm not sure, but I think that's we've discussed quite a bit, and yeah, I think just the film will be playing at the Roxy in late September, and then playing at Brain Dead in LA early October. So if you're in either of those places, come check it out too in the theater. Hopefully
Yeah,
we get a place to show it in Austin. That would be amazing. Um, but yeah, keep your eyes out for it.
I'll see what I can do. I know there's a good tie into between Vinegar Syndrome and AGFA. And one of the guys at AGFA is a guy named Brett Berg, and he does a lot of theatrical distribution just in general.
Hmm.
That's like one of the services Agfa offers. So I'm sure that Kyle knows him. Um, I'm sure they've worked together on stuff. But yeah, if not, I'll ask Kyle offline if I can make that connection because this is a movie that I think would play very well and on the screen. I mean, it works on home video too, of course, but like it just feels like this would be fun to see with a group of people and share some
Yeah.
of the laughs and some of those moments of like almost like catharsis a little bit when luckily like things don't go as bad as you think they're about to go.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great to play there too. Um, I love Austin. That would give me a reason to go down there anyway.
Awesome. There's the new theater that I just saw yesterday. I think I messaged this to you. I finally got to see the Werkmeister Harmonies, and it was on in a theater, which I was so pumped at.
Cool.
And it was an Austin Film Society. It's this Linklater's kind of passion project. Um, and he renovated an old theater and has three screens and it's just always showing art house stuff.
So
So
cool.
yeah, another fun little reason to be in Austin.
Yeah,
But cool. Well, Luca, hey, look, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for making time. And please, everybody, see what doesn't float and just pay attention to Gummy Films. Do you want people to follow you on socials and reach out to you and all that? Where should people
sure.
find you?
Yeah, follow I think it's just at Gummy Films on Instagram is kind of our main social. Um, so follow that and you'll get our updates.
Awesome.
And
Wonderful.
thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's been really fun.
Of course. Yeah, of course. All right. Well, I'll see you around.